So just how did Senate Democrats finally get to 50 votes on this big new climate and health care package? Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper of Colorado is here with us. If you believe your colleagues, sir, you were instrumental in this, that Senator Sinema, one of your colleagues, wanted to remove one of the taxing provisions, and you came up with an alternative. Say, give her what she wants. Here's a way to make up the money. Is that true?
Well, I was talking about Mark Warner and myself and Michael Bennett were all talking to Senator Schumer about a different part of the initiative, and it became clear that Senator Sinema was going to create some need for adjustments. So I suggested that some sort of an excise tax on the stock buybacks, which had been in play before, but then had disappeared. And it wasn't one of those things that I'd heard Joe Manchin vociferously complain about, or Kirsten. So I just suggested that, well, this is something, and maybe go to half of what it had been. It had been a 2% excise, maybe make it 1% to make it more, more bearable.
And so I want you to talk what you can about the substance. I want to get to the politics of the substance first. These are landmark investments in the climate. These are healthcare changes that Democrats have long wanted to do. What do you believe is the most important, and how's it going to change the lives of people out there?
Well, I think it's breathtaking. And this will be the largest investment in climate rescue in the history of the planet. No other country has ever had an initiative of this level. And what it's going to do is drive change and accelerate our ability to come up to scale on wind, solar, maybe clean nuclear, maybe green hydrogen. I mean, we're focusing on all of the above to make sure that we think we can get to, President Biden made that during his campaign. He was going to reduce emissions in the United States by 50% by 2030. Well, this gets us to a 40% reduction. That's 80% of President Biden's campaign promise. That's remarkable. And then you look at, we've been for decades working on trying to rein in prescription drug costs and the inflation in prescription drugs. Now Medicare is going to get to negotiate it. We're going to put caps for senior citizens. We're going to have the subsidies for people getting their insurance through the exchanges. That's going to extend that and expand that savings for millions of American people. This is a pretty powerful package.
You say powerful package. As you know, you're not on the ballot this year, but we're in an election year. We're less than 3 months from that election. This is what your colleague, the Republican colleague, Rick Scott, who happens to run the Republican Senatorial Committee, so he's raising money to help Republicans try to take back the Senate. Senate Democrats are using the inflation crisis they helped Joe Biden create with reckless government spending to justify even more reckless government spending. This makes no sense. Answer Senator Scott.
Well, I think Senator Scott needs only to look down the coast of Florida at the devastation that these more frequent and more intense hurricanes have caused to Florida and all around the Gulf Coast, all around the world, the wildfires. I worry that we can't call it a drought in the Southwest anymore because it is so prevalent and it seems to be growing and continuing much longer than a traditional drought. This might be desertification. Some people call it aridification. But, we're going to have less water. The cost of that, to not address that, is a type definition of insanity. The cost of not addressing it now far, far, far will outweigh what we're spending to, get clean wind, clean energy, and clean air.
So let me ask you the political question then. Democrats have made this a priority. You mentioned President Biden campaigned on this. The climate and the healthcare investments have been on the Democratic wish list for quite some time. Why did it take 19 months? I know it's 50-50's hard Senate math, but you were a mayor, a governor, and a businessman before you came to Washington. Why couldn't Democrats figure out what do we need to strip away? Why can't we just get at least pieces of this done and get to 50 a lot sooner than 19 months in and a lot sooner than 3 months before the election where maybe people don't see the results in time to give you credit?
Well, I think President Biden deserves credit for taking the time. Again, I have a tremendous sense of urgency around climate change. And this effort to climate rescue is long overdue. That said, he got it done, and no one else has ever been able to get it done. And in a 50-50 Senate, if you look at all the things he's done, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the PACT Act just got passed this past week. You go down all these major initiatives, some bipartisan, some not, but most of them bipartisan. This is in the first 2 years with a 50-50 majority, it's sort of like the economy. We have the greatest job numbers and the lowest unemployment in 50 years, and the market's going down, and people are wringing their hands. People look at President Biden and say, well, why haven't you done this faster?
Well, on that point then, what happened then? The president has record low job approval numbers right now. You just went through an impressive list, and you're right. There's no disputing what has been done. And yet, The president's approval rate lower than where Barack Obama was at this point, lower than where Donald Trump at this point. Barack Obama lost 63 seats in the House. Donald Trump lost 40 plus in the House. Is this Joe Biden's fault? Is this a failure to communicate? Or is it just the thick climate out there because of COVID and inflation and everything else, or both, or what?
Well, I don't think the communications out of the White House have been perfect. In other words, when they first got COVID under control, they said COVID's gone, and then we got a second wave. When they were first talking about this breakdown in the supply chain that really caused gas prices, crude oil to go up so high, they said, well, this is going to be transitory. I would have urged more, not that anyone ever asked me, but I would have urged that they be more cautious in their projections of good news. But that being said, they were coming out of the worst pandemic in the last century, in 100 years, that disrupted supply chains. And we're down. Our economy now is just in time. So no one has inventories to buffer against these kinds of disruptions. This is the first time we ever shut down, really shut down the entire global economy. My gosh, of course we're going to have serious challenges. We've bounced back better than most people. If you go back to what people were thinking back then, most people say if they could have seen where we are right now in August of 2022, they would have gone, my God, what a recovery. And yet you're right, he gets no credit. A little bit poor communications, and I think people are digesting this. They went through the pandemic.
The great state of Colorado has to its east the great state of Kansas. Common sense conservatives in Kansas sent a pretty loud message on abortion this week, where you had an overwhelming vote to not amend the state constitution, not open up essentially for the legislature to pass a ban or severe restrictions on abortion. A, what is that message? And B, from your perspective, what do Democrats need to do in the wake of Roe being wiped out and Dobbs now being the law of the land?
Well, I don't think we should overemphasize the political nature of this. Democrats have always stood for making civil rights of all people a priority. That's a basic fundamental component of a foundation of everything that Democrats believe. And a woman's right to control her own health care and her own body is a principal part of that. But I don't think people judge elections. And we've seen many, many Democrats, by only talking about the right to an abortion, we've seen many Democrats lose because it's about inflation. Right now, people are worried about their jobs and is their pay going to keep up with inflation? These are real household concerns, kitchen table concerns. But what we saw in Kansas definitely demonstrates that women are going to come out in numbers. And this is going to be a primary issue for them, that they don't want to have their right to control their own bodies taken away.
You have no doubt, this is a yes or no because we're out of time, you have no doubt now that you have 50 votes, you're going to pass this deal, the president will get it by next week?
You can never say never, but I have microscopically small doubts.
Senator, thanks for coming in. We'll continue the conversation. Appreciate it very much.